Yo everybody, what's going on? This is Keegan from Kman Reviews. If you enjoyed this review, make sure you hit that like and the subscribe button. And if you have any opinions at all that you would like to share, make sure to leave them down in the comment section. Verzache, my head is a mosh pit. Verzache is the alias of Canadian singer, songwriter, producer Zach Verzache. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Starting out initially as a small electronic producer in his teens, he began making his own music in 2014 and slowly but surely gaining more notoriety in the years since to really stand out among his contemporaries. All that hype seems to be spearheading the release of this latest album of his, My Head is a Mosh Pit, released in March of this year. I'll admit I wasn't familiar with Verzache before I got this viewer suggestion. Thank you so much for that, by the way. I'm always excited to discover new artists, especially when in doing my research I found a decent amount of similarities to artists like Cavetown or Jeremy Zucker or Quinn92, all artists I'm pretty fond of. So let's not waste any more time. Let's dive in. What are my thoughts on My Head is a Mosh Pit? Let's find out as I review this album track by track. We will start with the singles, with there being 5 of them. The first being Messed Up, which instantly had me hooked. This is an amazing track. I adore this percussion, the groovy sound of the snare, and that little hiss of the cymbal. There's something that is just so snappy and gratifying about it, but that's not to overlook the rest of the instrumental. I love the prominence of that acoustic guitar on the opening before it jumps to a bop of an alt-pop jam with the bright keys in the background. The bass has some real weight to it, and the song undergoes its fair share of tonal shifts. I especially like the part with the isolated percussion and vocals a little before halfway through. This is one of my favorite motifs ever in music. It's just so satisfying, and it's done so well here. There's also a slow tempo breakdown near the end that feels like a fitting conclusion to the track. Zach's delivery and charisma and the way he melds with the beat really remind me of Dominic Fike, especially with his more vibey tracks, which may just be another reason why I'm so into this one. I really like it. The second single, Calling, which actually is transitioned into from Messed Up, and it's a simple yet seamless transition with a phone ringing as it introduces the actual song. And right away, this one is much darker than Messed Up. Using the Dominic Fike comparison again, this is much more like his true rap stuff, with a moody grumbling in the bass, fragile ticking of the hi-hat, but of course some snaps and breezy guitar to keep the vibe grounded. This one also has a very enjoyable performance from Zach. The melodies all throughout the song are just earworm material, stuff that I'm still humming to this day. I also really like the breakdown where the bass disappears, leaving us with just the drum and vocals again. That's just personal preference. Still love that. Lyrically, it kind of seems to be about being fed up with this partner, ready to cut ties altogether, resorting to smoking to numb the anxiety and stress. Another good song here. The third single, Look Away, is probably the strongest Dominic Fike vibe I've heard yet. So much so that if you played me this song without context, I would honestly assume it's some lost cut from the Don't Forget About Me demos EP era, which may be a key indicator as to why I like the song so much. It starts off blissful enough with the acoustic guitar, but then those signature drum slaps come roaring in, a surrounding synth wall plus very infectious vocal melody to boot, with Zach even using a similar set of harmonies and cadence to sound like Dominic. It's actually kind of uncanny. Another breakdown is present here. This time it's just the track getting slowed with some dirty, rumbling bass and claps. Not as satisfying to me as the others, but thankfully the regular beat comes back for the outro. I really like this one too. The fourth single, All I Need, seems to be the biggest hit from this album and opens up with this perky melody that almost sounds like a flat kalimba as the acoustic guitar and drums introduce themselves. As a result of this almost summery instrumental, this was the first of the singles to me that didn't give me any noticeable influences. This feels the most like his own track, and I think it's pretty decent. Certainly not my favorite, but I can't really resist that staccato guitar strumming on the chorus, or the smooth alt-pop flair from every word Zach sings. Speaking of which, his vocals still have a similar aesthetic, but he goes in with a little bit of reverb at times, which I don't think benefits the song. I think it's already light enough as is. I don't think it needed the echoey, ethereal singing to back it up. Lyrically, the song is pretty basic, just about this girl being all he needs, proceeding to elaborate on these desires. Not as crazy about this one as the others, but it's not bad. And the fifth and final single, Think About It, is a very unique track, but unique in the best way possible. The flow, the energy feels very inspired by the cloud rap scene as Zach uses this mumbly staccato flow and frequent ad-libs that just fuse so well with his percussion. It's like if popping and locking was vocal, if that makes any sense at all. The rest of the instrumental here is just as satisfying. The bass is bubbly, I like the minor acoustic guitar moments as well that just make the track a little more lighthearted on a sonic level at least. It's one of the shorter songs in the record too, just barely under 2.5 minutes, and as much as I'd want it to be longer, I think it leaves just enough of a memorable impact on the album. Pretty solid singles run, let's see how the rest of the album compares. Now for the rest of the tracks. Opener Forgot kicks off the album in a pretty hypnotic way with a spacious ambience and these various instrumental blips, an occasional acoustic guitar and synths orbiting around it. It kind of feels like entering the portal that is this album. This instrumental also gives me pretty strong Joji vibes, maybe aside from the synths that pierce through the mix. It really does feel like a beat that was made for him. Zach really blends into this beat well though, and I just love when his voice syncs up with the bass. It is so pleasing to hear as he sings these lyrics about struggling mentally, not being able to focus on what he wants in life, turning to smoking again to cope. Kind of feels more like an intro, more so than its own song, but it's still a good intro regardless. Tongue-Tied is a pretty simple song from a compositional standpoint, featuring this specific perkiness in the guitar followed by a mid to low tempo percussion, crispy bass, and some pulsating synths. It basically kind of just sounds like an indie pop song you may hear on pop radio, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, especially since Zach's vocals have a good amount of life to them as he delivers a decent rap flow on the second verse, whereas the rest is just some more nice vibey singing. Lyrically, it kind of seems to be about how this partner breaks through his shield, gets him to let his guard down, but of course also factoring in some flexing as rap styles often bring with them. Pretty solid song. Same Difference, which is a 28-second interlude, which is just some spoken word over reverberated guitar and static, just basically about how you can say something one way, but if you were someone else and said the same thing, it could have a totally different meaning. It's really just an interlude. Coping Mechanisms, which is a 36-second interlude with some more spoken word over some otherworldly ambience, basically about how coping mechanisms shouldn't be something that people should be afraid of. We're all human, and sometimes that's kind of what you need as you get older. Great message, but it's another interlude, don't really have much to say about it. FMU, which is an acronym for Fuck Me Up, is easily the most rap-centric song on the entire album, and to be honest, I kind of fuck with it. It's almost got a bit of a Playboi Carti, maybe Drain Gang, or even maybe Roach Mafia vibes from this kind of rap here with the pitched vocals, coarse distorted bass, and an ominous whistling ambience to add some intensity to the track. Zach's voice actually contributes to that feeling of the inspiration as well, as he just walks over this beat with a mumbling gait, rapping about how the luxuries and the aforementioned coping mechanisms in his life are managing to keep him sane after this girl keeps fucking him up. Pretty great track. Mouth Shut brings the album right back to familiarity, and this one's fine. I'm not too crazy about this one, but it does present a pretty decent vibe with the chunky bass, the gritty snare, and the overall pop rap structure of the song. Gotta say though, I'm not a fan of Zach's airy falsetto on the beginning of the chorus. Sure, it's an extremely brief moment of the song, but I just don't think it adds anything to the track. Other than that though, I like the buoyancy in his delivery on the verses, probably the best part of the track, but the whole song just kind of happens. It doesn't leave that much of a lasting impression with 2 verses and 3 short, immemorable choruses that honestly feel more like refrains. Just an alright song in the end. Not bad, but certainly not top tier. Own Yourself is yet another interlude, the longest on the album at 1 minute and 17 seconds, and I actually really like this idea as an interlude. It's basically a clip from an interview about the fear of posting your music online and worrying about what your followers are going to think about it. I'm sure that's a very real fright for a lot of different artists, especially ones who have been changing and growing as people, and I was pleasantly surprised to see it brought up here. It still is an interlude, I'm not going to keep it around for casual listens, but it is a great addition to this album. Figure It Out starts off as a deep and gorgeous ballad, and I just love this section of the song. The piano is so rich and lush, and when it's paired with Zach's melancholic crooning, it truly is a match made in heaven. That goes on for the first half of the track until after the first chorus, when the second verse comes in, transitioning pretty effortlessly with the snare, the blinking synth, and it introduces the trap skitter and taps of the bass, bringing back the piano for the next chorus before it all just coalesces for the final minute of the song. This track is a journey filled with unexpected turns, several tonal shifts, and I love every second of it. Lyrically, it seems to be about this unsteady relationship and the partner isn't confident in it, and he kinda is expecting the worst too, but he doesn't want to fill her with false hope. Honestly, one of my favorites here. I love this one. Time is just such a bop. I love how impactful this percussion and bass is. It's so grimy, it's so upfront, it's like I can feel every single beat inside of my chest. It's that powerful. There's also a really sweet synth wall surrounding this dominant nucleus, which does a really good job to illuminate Zach's vocals, which almost have a little bit of a monotone feeling to them, which only benefits these lyrics about trying to focus on helping himself or trying to get help, admitting outright that he is not in a good place mentally. May not have had too much to say about this one, but it's really just a nice banger. Great track. Evil is a pretty groovy tune. I love the wavy ripples of the bass behind the steady yet firm percussion. There's also a hazy guitar plucking and some synth work just kind of sitting in the background, which helps to keep the song stably grounded in the indie genre. And I think they add a kind of light, informal, comfortable feeling to the song. I love how much weight Zach's vocals have on the chorus, even in front of the razor sharp melody. There's some strong harmonies, rock solid singing as a whole. It's just yet another bop. Lyrically, my best interpretation of this is that the evil in this track is his mind, and how he's interpolating this relationship as nothing special, only really seeing this partner for their body, and not something that could really last. I mean, regardless of whatever it means, I still really enjoy the sound of the track. Run is the longest song on the album, 10 seconds short of 5 minutes, and honestly, it kind of feels like it. Yeah, this is my least favorite track on the album. Sure, the instrumental is decent. I don't hate the twinkling synths or the percussion that's just so bright in the mix, like it's the lone flame in a room shrouded with darkness. Zach's vocals are also pretty solid, opening up the song with this heavy echo before his natural voice kicks in proper, delivering some pretty moving emotional intensity. However, I think what really weighs the song down for me is the combination of the slower tempo and the length. To the track's credit, though, it does try to incorporate a bit of a pickup in tempo, but there's not too much substance in that section to back it up. A good third verse, but also a refrain that I don't think was necessary. I would have preferred a final chorus to end the track properly. There's nothing inherently wrong with the track, but in my opinion, there could have been some fat trim to make it a bit more palatable. These Walls opens up as a sweet, chill, inoffensive acoustic track with that layered strumming as the guitar cries lightly when all of a sudden that slapping percussion makes its way in, accompanied by this staccato, plucky instrument. I can't quite put my finger on what it is. Zach's vocals are quite appropriate for this song with how minimal the instrumental is. He plays a bit more of a background role, letting the beat slowly build as he lingers behind it, with a light, breathy falsetto for the majority of the tune. Plus, the dirty breakdown at the end was a really nice touch. The song also ventures into that 4-minute range, but it has enough diversity to stand out in the tracklist as a whole. Good stuff here. Last Year is a much more mellow track. The ethereal, spacious guitar plucking presents a calming vibe as the gentle taps of the percussion tie everything together pretty cleanly, and it holds this smooth vibe throughout the entire track. However, it's Zach's vocals here that are really the star of the show, giving us another very emotive performance, some of the best on the entire album, as he sings about previously being in a bad spot, kind of isolating himself from society, but now being in a much better position mentally, and expressing that he knows he's not useless, he's working on himself, and he knows he can do anything, finally breaking out of this self-deprecating shell the album has cocooned itself into. Great track, and honestly, would have been an amazing closer. And finally, the closer, Nothing Lasts, as I just mentioned, feels like an odd closer to the record. We had Last Year, which kind of felt like a rejuvenation of life and happiness and self-worth, and then immediately with this next track, we have the fallout of this relationship, descending back into this pessimistic mindset about how nothing lasts and now he's broken forever. If it's meant to be an ironic closer, then congratulations, it worked, but I just feel like in general, Last Year would have been a much more satisfying finish to the album, instead of a track with a similar vibe to Last Year, but slightly more down and somber. It's fitting to its content, that's for sure, as Zach croons in a heartbreaking tone about the aforementioned lyrics. It's an alright song, but I just don't feel like it was all that necessary in the tracklist. Overall, yeah, this album really did surprise me. I kind of expected it to be this generic indie singer-songwriter record, and the sheer length of the tracklist definitely didn't give me the highest of expectations, but there's a pretty wide and varied array of genres, styles, and performances. Wasn't perfect in my opinion, some tracks definitely felt outclassed by others, some were a bit more forgettable, and I do feel like the tracklist could have been trimmed a bit, maybe to about 15, but that's just my personal opinion. I still had a great time with this. I'm feeling a 7.5 out of 10 on this album. Well guys, hope you enjoyed that review. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.